Tursi. I had to work while I was in school because I had to make ends meet. So I had a full-time job, and I remember I became very close to the girls that I was working with. So in school, same year, we had a lot in common, or so I thought initially. And I remember very early on in our friendship, they were like, oh, well, my family is the third, fourth generation in the school, and I'm going to go enroll to be in a sorority. And I remember thinking, like, I've never even contemplated that before. Like, my greatest accomplishment was when I got accepted, and I will say this, into college, a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was like, are you sure this is me? So that was, I think, as a student, my moment. And then graduating for me, it was like a moment of like validation, I think, of, okay, I did it. Like, all this paid off, all the hard work, the sacrifices, the not being able to go to like the parties because I had to study because I had an AP biology test on Monday. It all paid off. This is all worth it. I think it's really just, and I said this before, put yourself out there, be your own PR person. Nobody knows you better than you. And that it might take a little bit before you see the fruits of that coming to life, but eventually it will. You know, always that 7 degrees of separation. And I think you never know who knows somebody who may give you an opportunity that you didn't even know was possible or existed.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining for another episode. Today we have Jessica Tursi. She is the Director of Disability Services and Navigation at Goodwill Industries of Southwest Florida. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So right now we're in the middle of spring and it's about 45 degrees here in New York. What's the weather like in Florida?
Oh, it's right now in the 80s, humid.
And how long have you been living in Florida?
Oh gosh, I've been here now for over 20 years.
How did you ended up at your job?
So I actually, out of getting my bachelor's degree, went into our local healthcare system. I thought it would get me a foot in the door in the career in the field I wanted. And so I thought it would give me a good foundation for what I planned on doing next. So I was with the healthcare system for a little bit. I got to be part of the referral team, and I got to be a part of a lot of different experiences. So any opportunity that I got, I kind of dove in and tried to have those options available. And I finally got into the field that I wanted. I was able to be a registered behavioral technician. So I helped kids who maybe had a little bit more of behavioral challenges and needed more one-on-one assistance. So I was able to do that. And then from there, that agency that I worked for was moving out of the state, and I just wasn't prepared to make that move. I heard of the opportunity here at Goodwill, and it was for a job coach in that same population. So I became a job coach, and shortly after doing that, I heard that they were also starting a life skills development program for adults with disabilities. So I jumped at that opportunity and have been with that program ever since. And now I have the privilege of being the director.
And how long have you been at this role?
So director, I'm going on 3 years. With Goodwill, I'm going on 13 years.
Oh, terrific. So let's take it back, I think, to 15 years. And let's start. Where did you grow up and what were your high school years like?
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and we moved here to Florida because my parents had a job change. And my high school, my parents really pushed because I was born here. They wanted the American dream. So they put a lot of pressure. I was also the oldest sibling. So I had to set a good example for my younger sister. And so they really pushed that of going to college. And that kind of there was no plan B. And once you're going to college. And so I really just tried to find as many opportunities. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into my high school's international baccalaureate program, which in essence just means that you got to have college credits before you graduated. And I think that really helped me because it almost forced you to have a mentor in the sense of someone guiding you along that process. And I just am so grateful for that opportunity and to have that support, because my parents were 100% on board with whatever I needed to do, any extracurriculars. They were driving me places. They were eating for tutors, whatever they could do to make it happen for me. But they couldn't give me firsthand experience of what that process was like. We'll help you, but we don't know what to do. So I did have a support system of all of us beginning this process for the first time. So I do think that was beneficial.
One of the common themes I hear is having parents who value education, and though they may not know necessarily the path, but they will work to get those resources. And so on that pathway, how did you envision yourself? Were you thinking about, and I hear this a lot in first generation students too, going for medicine or law, sort of those glamorous, so to speak, jobs. What did that look like for you? What was your career vision?
So I followed that same track. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so my whole high school, that's what I did. And I took AP biology and I took all of these classes because I was dead set on being a pediatrician. I think that also fell into my parents' desire for that American dream of, being able to have a child that goes to be one of those top tier positions in life of lawyer or doctor. So I started school and I was pre-med. I was a biology major. And two semesters in, I had to take an elective and I went through the list. And one of them was abnormal psychology. And I thought, hey, this is different than what I was taking. It should be something interesting. And I took it and I was hooked. I loved that so much. And I remember being so stressed out to call my parents after finishing that semester to tell them, hey, I think I'm changing my career path. I think I'm going into psychology. And I remember they had a lot of questions, like, what does this look like? What is the end? Like, what are you doing? And it was eventually when I explained myself and they saw the passion I had for it, they were all on board.
And so where were you in school at that point?
So I was going into my sophomore year.
Okay.
I was going to the University of South Florida.
Nice.
And so I switched majors my sophomore year and I became a psychology major.
Were you able to travel to these schools, and did you apply to more than one? How did that selection process look like for you?
So I did apply to several schools, and I will say my parents did everything to try to get us to be able to go travel, to go see these schools. I think in the moment, I really understood the sacrifices they were making. I get it now because I'm now a mom and have a child of my own that I'm trying to get him set up for the future. But yeah, I see that now. They were taking out loans. They were taking out second jobs. But I was able to travel. I was able to go see the schools. And I will say I was fortunate enough that they really left the school selection process to me. I was very focused and wanted to achieve these goals. My research, I looked up the schools, and when we sat down, it was a process in itself because I was trying to figure out, what does it mean to research a school? What does that entail? Is it just, hey, what school is the most popular? Is it the school that most of my high school is going to? Is it the school that has programs? And so that was a little bit of a learning curve, like anything.
Recently, I read a book, and this is the third episode that I mentioned this book. And the only reason why I mentioned it is it made such a deep impact in my understanding of what college education looks like. And I'm going to have the title of the book in the show notes because right now I'm looking at the book, but I can't remember the title. And essentially it talks about colleges, and there are over 4,000 colleges in the United States, something I did not know. And in the process, not every college is for everyone. How did you decide that this school was the right one for you?
So in my research, and mind you, this is when I was pre-med track, the University of South Florida had a very intensive research department. They had a very large hospital in Tampa, was right on the campus. So it had a lot of things that I was like, oh, if I'm already in the school, these are connections that I've already paved for me. I can just really take advantage of those opportunities. So ultimately, that's why South Florida was my number one choice, was because of those connections. And I just thought make things harder for myself when I can set myself up for success. And it was a school that was geared to what I wanted to do.
In your learning process, at what point did you realize, or I guess what was an example when you were in college and you realized I am not like everyone else? And what did you feel, perceive that made you think or put you in the place that you're a first gen student?
So I can think of one very clear example. I had to work while I was in
Mm.
school because I had to make ends meet. So I had a full-time job, and I remember I became very close to the girls that I was working with. So in school, same year range, we had a lot in common, or so I thought initially. And I remember very early on in our friendship, they were like, "Oh, well, my family is the third, fourth generation in this school, and I'm gonna go enroll to be in a sorority." And I remember thinking, like, I've never even contemplated that before, like, that wasn't on my radar. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, my family, generations of women in my family have been in the sorority. You know, try to pledge for the sorority." And I remember just thinking, like, that is crazy to me. You have so many generations that went to college and were part of these groups. And I remember hearing their experience of the pledging process and all of that. And I could not wrap my head around that, thinking of imagine having so many generations of experience and support and advice you could like really hone into. So that to me was the first like very glaring, okay, I'm in a different scenario.
Building that social capital through the fraternities and the sororities, that's a big thing because that's how you connect and you build relationships. Going on the topic of building relationships, since you changed trajectory after taking this abnormal
Mhm.
psychology class, which I'm afraid to take that class because I probably will see myself very abnormal and I'm trying to avoid that. So maybe at a separate episode, we can go deeper into that. But for the moment, how did you build mentors in school or how did you build guidance from other people, if any?
When I took that honor psychology class, I remember going to the professor and saying, I think this class changed my path. I think this class is making me realize that I'm in the wrong field or in the wrong path to the wrong field. And she said, "That's great. I'm so happy to hear that." I have another class that's like the step above this one. You should really consider taking it." And I said, "Oh, of course. Once I sign out for classes, I'll sign up for it." And so I did. And at that moment, her teaching assistant ended up graduating. So she offered me the opportunity and I took it. She was in the process of getting her credentialing, board certified behavior analyst. And I had never heard of that position. I didn't know what that was. So yes, I was here for her classes, but also I was hearing the things she was saying when she was prepping for things and she was going to do things. And she would ask me like, "Hey, do you want some extra hours?" So in assisting her journey, I made that turn of it's not just psychology in the overarching field. It was more of that specific path, and I fell in love.
And so after that, did you start doing internships? How did you make the actual transition? Because one of the things about first gen students is to have this great passion for a career path, but making that transition from college to an actual job, it's a big challenge. What did that look like for you? How were you able to find internship jobs?
So once I graduated, like I said before, I went into the healthcare field here locally, and I was checking people in, referrals, that kind of thing, just getting my very foundational. But I still was on social media. I was looking at different events that were happening that had to do with the field that I wanted to be in. And I would go to these events. I would go on weekends. I would go at night. And just, even though I wasn't a part of that field, it was still something I was interested in. And I wanted to know who were the key players, what are the different options, what is happening. So I did make it so that I was at least knowledgeable enough where if I did get the opportunity, I could stand my own in that sense. I will say that I ran into, and I'm sure a lot of other students do, where entry level is not necessarily entry level. They want someone with a little bit more experience, and I, unfortunately, at that time only had the volunteering and the TA assistance. But I made myself continue to learn on my own and, make sure up to date on all the best practices and things like that. I needed to package myself and make sure that I was in the places that I needed to be in.
The couple of things you mentioned, and I want to highlight because I think they're important. One, that initiative to attend these events and be involved. So for those of you who are listening, whatever area you're pursuing, if you don't have that internship or that job right after school, get into those spaces, especially now with social media, you can figure out ways to connect with other people, attend as many social events as you can within that area, because you're going to understand how that world operates. And as most of you already know, or probably know, opportunities come from other people. So you really have to connect with others. And then the second thing is, though some jobs are entry level, some of them will require experience or some sort of background. As you said, be your own PR person. I love how you said that, because you will have to advocate for yourself. You will find people to help you, but you have to be ready for those opportunities. And that can look differently. You could be doing volunteer work, internship, etc. And so talk to us about your current job. What you're doing, it's noble work, and I do admire. And when we connected, I couldn't wait to get to this episode because I really wanted to hear about the amazing work you do. So tell us about your role at Goodwill and what is your sort of day to day.
I have the privilege of being the Director of Disability Services Navigation. So I oversee all of the disability services that we offer here, being the Opportunity Program, which is our life skills program for adults with disabilities. It's the autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, traumatic brain injuries. You really get to take someone post-high school and give them the life skills. We give them a safe space to learn. They're with people, that they connect with and they can really work with. And so our main focus is giving them the life skills in a classroom safe setting. And then we make a real world connection. So if they're learning money skills in the classroom, then maybe the following week they're going to a bank and withdrawing or depositing funds, or maybe they're taking a budget and going to the grocery store and seeing if they can compare prices and make sure they're going together. Ultimate goal that they become as independent in their life as possible. For folks are varying levels, and so that's kind of main go-to. We currently are serving over 100 individuals a year, so that's a really exciting thing that we have. And then I also oversee our disability navigation program, which basically helps families, once they get a diagnosis of a disability for their child, navigate the space. So they get to kind of have somebody go along with them and know, okay, this is the first step. This is what we're going to do. And now that we are here, let's connect all these pieces so that the family is also as well prepared as possible. Because that's something else, is that, especially in my world, it's not just the individual we're serving. It's that whole team, that whole family, everyone involved. So yeah, I get the honor of working with some amazing people that teach me new things every day.
What's something really big that you're working on or that's coming up ahead?
Yeah, so we are very fortunate to make some great connections and partners. Right now, we actually have a few new projects in the works. One of them being in Southwest Florida, we have a lot of sporting teams. And in my program, I have a lot of folks who are huge sports fans. Problem being, because of their disability, they may not always be able to attend these sporting events because sensory needs, overload, it's just a lot. So we're working with different teams here locally to create a sensory bag program so that people can go and experience these things that we take for granted. I can just look online, pick a game I want to go to, buy a ticket and go. And I don't necessarily have to think about, is it going to be too loud? Are there going to be too many people? Are there things that are going to set me off and give me anxiety? So I want to make it so that these families can experience life just like the rest of us. It may look a little different, but that's okay. That's our goal, is to make our community a little bit more inclusive. So yeah, I'm really excited about the next few projects we have coming up, and I can't wait to see them come to fruition.
Thank you for sharing that. And for any of you who are listening and are interested in psychology or the type of work that you do, connect with Jessica and her work. She's doing tremendous. What is the biggest or what is the greatest accomplishment you've achieved as a first-gen student?
Oh, so as a first-gen student, I would say my greatest accomplishment was when I got accepted, and I will say this, into college, and then graduating for me, it was like a moment of, like, validation, I think, of, "Okay, I did it." Like, all this paid off, all the hard work, the sacrifices, the not being able to go to, like, the parties because I had to study because I had an AP biology test on
Yeah.
Monday. It all paid off, so I would say those 2 moments, even though, the start those were the 2 moments where I was like, "Okay, this is all worth it."
If you could go back in time when you were getting ready to school, how would you advise yourself and your parents?
I would honestly, I would probably say to keep on going, that everything's gonna, like, work out eventually in a situation, but also to learn that not everyone is posting online or things like that exactly the perfect scenario, right? You're posting a highlight reel, right? When people are putting themselves out there, they're posting things or they're putting online or they're communicating with you the things that work, right? People are not gonna come to you and be like, "Hey, I got here, but these 50 road bumps came in the way." And I think, especially as a first gen student, you want to compare yourself to all these
Yeah.
other people and be like, oh, but they got into their top 5 schools and I didn't. Or, hey, to travel and go abroad their senior year and I didn't get to do that. So it's really the comparison is just, it's not even a real comparison because you're comparing yourself to something that doesn't exist. So that to me would probably be the 2 things that I would say to myself is just keep working on you and keep whatever path you have. Everyone's path is gonna be different. We can all get to the same point, but I could take a very different road than someone else, and that's okay. Not everyone has to have the same, path in life.
And you mentioned you're a parent. I have a 6-year-old son. And one of the things that I struggle is building this, build a pathway where we don't just give them everything because we didn't have everything. And I think that a lot of parents may feel that way, I'm assuming. Sometimes I'm trying to figure out how to make it challenging for my son to learn his lessons. How are you planning to raise your child in this situation? Or in other words, how are you planning to advise your child on careers and college now, again, not being first gen?
Yeah, so I have a 3-year-old son. If you ever meet him, you would think he's 16 because the things that come out of his mouth sometimes. But my husband and I struggle with this too, of us wanting to almost overcompensate for the things that we felt that we didn't have the opportunity to have or the things that we wish we could have done. So him and I go back and forth all the time. We need to slow down. He's got to be able to learn these lessons I get that he's 3, but I also want to set him up so that he has all the opportunities and he sees all the differences. I want him to be exposed to as much different cultures and people as possible. One of my parents, they're very involved in his life. So I always tell him, these are the things that abuela does, and this is what your grandfather does, and these are the things that happen. And I want him to learn from our experiences, but have his own path in life, right? I think we've all learned that sometimes higher education is not for everyone. And I think that's okay if that's the path you choose to have. But I want him to be able to have the freedom to explore passions because I feel like I am very fortunate that I do have the passion for my career. And I can't imagine putting so much time and energy into a career that I don't love or that I don't fully believe in. So I want him to have that opportunity and know that however that takes him, that we'll be there to guide him and we will be there to advise him from our mistakes in life and the things we've done.
Jessica, before we end, is there anything else that you would like to share? Any advice, any tips that you would like to provide for our listeners?
I think it's really just, and I said this before, put yourself out there, be
Yeah.
your own PR person. Nobody knows you better than you. And it might take a little bit before you see the fruits of that coming to life, but eventually it will. And eventually it'll be, oh, yeah, you should go talk to this person because you told me you do that. And now this person, always that 7 degrees of separation. And I think you never know who knows somebody who may give you an opportunity that you didn't even know was possible or existed. So definitely, figure out what your package is and put it out there.
Perfect. Jessica, thank you for joining today. Thank you for sharing your journey and the amazing work that you're doing. And for everyone listening, tune in for the next episode. Jessica, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.